only.
Carry On Only. Dedicated to inspiring your next global adventure. With award-winning photographer, creative director, and travel expert, Jill Pater. Jill has worked in over 100 countries, has published 21 books on architecture, design, travel, and gastronomy. Now, here's Jill and her co-host, Lisa Polacek.
We're back with one more bonus episode in the Carry On Only series. Today, we're going to talk with Jill and our friend Robin about how to actually bite the bullet, make the decision, and actually book the trip. A lot of times, I think we get stuck in, like, what if this? And, oh, I don't know about that. And, like, you have this destination in mind, but you're not making any commitments yet. So how do you get started? So I know my destination.
Yes.
How do I figure out the next step to take?
Well, I always start, and I have to say it is fair, because even though I travel all the time and I've booked tons of trips, it's still a little bit scary sometimes if I'm going to a region I haven't spent a lot of time in, or I'm doing like a slightly different type of trip than I normally do. It can be hard, right? Because you're putting money on the line, you're booking off your time, and it's just like, it's not something you have to do. It's something that you kind of want to do. It's
a luxury.
It's a luxury, and it is a little bit scary every time to bite the bullet. I usually start looking at airfare, and there's a couple of sites that I love for that. If you're booking just a regular round trip ticket, I love the site Momondo, and you don't have to worry about the names because these are all going to be in our show notes that you can link directly to. But I love Momondo. If you're doing a multi-city trip, you can also look at Momondo, but I recommend then going through an air broker like AirTrex is one. And they're just going to help you figure out, like, say you want to go to Southeast Asia for a month, right? When you're doing these longer leg trips, they can really, travel agent can really help you figure out where it makes sense to go first, how to maximize your budget. Maybe there's even a place you weren't thinking of going, but you can kind of sneak in on the ticket, for the same price. So really is going to help you maximize your airfare that way. Once you have an idea too, it's always good with flights if your dates are flexible. International trips are usually cheaper on Tuesdays and Wednesdays for whatever reason, certainly during the week. And so just looking at the dates and seeing like the best dates to go can save you sometimes up to like 50%. 50 to 60%, and on the time of year. So that's the first stop. So I kind of have that queued up in one window, right? One tab is airfare. Mm-hmm. And then we have hotels, or accommodation, which for me is, I do sometimes get a little bit OCD looking at hotels because I have to look at everything, and I want to see all the options. I want to see all the design. I want to see all the levels. I want to see all the prices. So it can take a little bit longer if you're that way. And then I always like check them out. So when I book, I usually book through booking.com. And the reason I do is because when you book through these larger sites, there is a bit more of insurance. For example, I was in Russia during the World Cup last summer. I was in Moscow, and I got in at 3 a.m. I got to the hotel around 4, and it was a new boutique hotel. And we arrived, and the cab driver, didn't speak very much English, and I don't really speak much Russian, right? And so we're outside at 4 a.m, and this place is literally under scaffolding, right? Like
crap.
There's nothing, there's like rebar hanging out of it. A guy is in there painting. And so he goes in to ask, and I'm like, well, that's weird. This must be the wrong address, or there must be something wrong with it. He goes in to ask. He's like, no, this is a hotel. They're like, yeah, we're opening tomorrow. It'll be ready tomorrow. And I'm like, there's no way, right?
It's 4 a.m. It is tomorrow.
It is tomorrow, right? So we went to another hotel. But, long story short, I was protected because I booked on this site. And this was during the World Cup. So there was no availability. There was like practically zero availability in the city. And everything that was there was like, the things coming up were like $6,800 a night, like thousands of dollars, or like, crazy prices. And so because I booked through the site, they immediately had someone that spoke English that I could speak to on the phone. And they got me into something. They said, we're very nice and very sweet. And we're just like, don't worry about whatever it costs. We're going to reimburse you, which is a really nice feeling, right? When you're traveling, you're a solo traveler, you probably didn't anticipate spending like $30,000 on a hotel or something, and that they just say, take care of it and be safe. It was like nice to hear after you've had this long flight, this, entry start. So that's why I like Booking.com will always have my business, or a bigger engine like that can put you somewhere else and have those connections when you're traveling internationally. Airbnb is another good one if you like Airbnb.
How do you feel
style.
about Airbnb?
I like Airbnb for traveling with groups, like when you want to stay in a house. I feel like it makes a lot of sense. As a solo traveler, I don't use Airbnb a lot. I like the amenities of a hotel. I kind of like the safety of a hotel. I like knowing that it's cleaned every day, and having, hotel desk staff and service. It's just, for me, a little bit more reliable.
That is a very good
And
point.
price point to price point, it ends up being kind of, the same. But for travelers that are happy staying in an extra room, it certainly can save you a lot of money and also help you meet people. I have used Airbnb more recently, and I tend to go with 4.5 stars and above on Airbnb and have had great experiences, great hosts that would rival any hotel. So I do really like the site and recommend it. On Booking.com, I go for 8.5 and above, places that are 8.5 and above on a scale of 10. And then I usually just cross-check those places on TripAdvisor. And on TripAdvisor, I try to aim for 4.5 stars and above on the ratings. The ratings do matter, and it's actually very helpful because I find with those numbers, you can't really go wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know on some of your past shows, you've talked about ground transportation and that you have the ability to do that from your computer, from the safety of your own home before you even leave the country. So in some of those instances, what apps do you recommend or what places do you recommend to book your trip that way where you can actually get the ground transportation set up for you in order to enjoy your vacation?
I think it's great, especially if you're going to a place that might be a little bit scary for you for the first time or a little bit outside of your comfort zone. I think having the ground transportation in place can be, really helpful. It's just, you get to the airport, somebody's holding a sign with your name. It's pretty nice. And so the best place to go for that when you're landing is, I think, the hotel, the accommodation you're staying in. They'll send somebody that obviously knows where it is and knows, to pick you up and knows the timing for that. So I'd go with the hotel that you're staying with first. The great thing about the apps, Uber and Lyft, is that they are in so many major cities. And especially if you don't speak the language in the city you're going to, they can be so helpful because you just type in your address. You don't have to communicate with a taxi driver. And there's so many safety, there's just a natural safety built into it, right? They're tracking the driver, they're tracking you. You can put in where you're going without necessarily speaking the language. You can also track where they are to pick you up, match the license plates, and also track while you're going where you are, right? To make sure you're actually going to that destination. So I think that's been, like, I was in Brazil last summer, and that was just such a huge help because I was in taxis all the time. I traversed Rio de Janeiro upside down and sideways, Brasilia, and kind of some of the outlying areas. And it would have been a totally different trip if I was just dealing with taxi drivers because I just punch it in, we say hello and we go. It's not this explanation of where you're going. There's no negotiation on price. I mean, for a solo female traveler, that has been like the best invention ever.
Now, that I come from a magazine background, so
Yes,
I'm
I
super
do.
curious, what travel magazines do you read and follow the advice of? And do you pay attention to the travel sections of any major newspapers anymore? Are they still relevant? And also, what are your the bookmarked travel websites that you use?
So I think Travel and Leisure really does a great job of especially their online edition. If I'm going somewhere, I'll just type in Travel and Leisure and the name of the destination.
Yeah.
And they have these great little guides. I think they do a really good job of picking out hotels at different ranges. They're usually kind of mid-range and higher, but I think their curation of hotels is really good. They'll give you 5 to 7. And they're really solid choices in places that really make you feel like you're in the destination. In terms of other sites, I do sometimes look at Lonely Planet just for the general overview of a place. I think they have a great country overview. They have great history, just kind of queued up, sliced up, curated, written on the site. I also like CNN Travel, has great articles, kind of really thoughtful pieces about travel and anything you kind of want travel-wise queued up. I do like, because I'm such an architecture aficionado, from there I would go to either architecture or food places. So Dwell magazine has a lot of, Dwell Online has a lot of great travel feature or architectural features that are about places abroad. And for food is a little bit interesting. It kind of comes in very, different ways, but like Food and Wine will have usually something travel-wise. Travel and Leisure also has good food editorial pieces written as well.
Cool.
Yeah, and I think the Departures magazine, the in-flight magazines have all kind of bumped it up because they realize
It's
you're
a captive
stuck here.
audience.
Yeah, you have a very captive audience. And oftentimes now, with the publishing world having changed so much and who has money in editorial, they actually do, I think, a really good job of their destinations. Some of them have just great overviews, great, little places, and sometimes I'll just cut them out on a plane and keep them new places that are opening.
Yeah.
Now I have a question that's a little strange. Take, for instance,
That's what you're here for, the strange stuff.
I've only been out of the country once. And when I did tour another country, I had a pen pal who lived there that helped tour me around by car. So when you're at home in the safety of your home before you even leave to go abroad or even somewhere here in the U.S., do you plan out all your activities, or is that something that you wait until you get there and kind of just go? Because I know a lot of these places have tours or certain things. I mean, I'm a zip liner. I love to go zip lining.
Oh,
I can see that. I can see that about you, Robin.
So are those kinds of things that you can just do on the fly when you get there
On the
to
fly.
your
Yeah.
destination? Or is that something that you have to pre-plan and pre-purchase before you get to that destination? I know you've been all over the world. So is that, it's probably hit or miss where some are planned ahead of time and paid for, or some are just, you just go do it.
Right. I like to kind of research all the activities in advance, but I usually don't book anything unless I have like a very short amount of time and I know I'm going to be landing and I kind of want to hit the ground running. But I usually just make a list or like do printouts online of things that I really want to do. And then once I get there, it's usually going to be cheaper to book in country when we're doing things internationally, because anything that you book on the major websites here tend to be more expensive. There's a pretty big bump up in fee. And once you get in country, you'll see that there's probably a number of different tour guides that offer the same exact thing you're looking to do. And they're just not coming up on the English search engines, right? And so you can kind of get pricing. You might be able to also get variations of that. So say you do want to go zip lining or you want to go trekking, you're going to have like 5 or 6 different tour companies usually that do that. Some might offer a 4-hour, an 8-hour, or 2-day. And so you just have a little bit more variety once you're there. But it's good to have that information in advance so that when you get there, you can start kind of booking these things right away. For certain places like major cities during high season, like say Paris or St. Petersburg, you want to go to the museums, buying those ticket passes online in advance is important because they're so jammed, the lines are so long, and it's going to help you, 1, secure your ticket, and then 2, actually like get in while you're staying. So it just depends on really how busy the destination is. But for, I would say 98% of what I do, it's not booked in advance. I wait till I get there. There's also things that we just, for whatever reason, even though we are, well into the information age and we have all this technology, there's just certain things you don't really know about, oddly enough, until you get there. Like you've read about it, but maybe it just didn't kind of come off the way it really is. And you get there and you're like, oh, I really want to do this, or I really want to do that. Or there might be kind of side tours or, places that are a couple hours away or something else that you want to see. So I like leaving the agenda a little bit loose, but having everything stacked and ready to go, places I want to go and things I want to see.
Just doing your homework ahead of time, but not necessarily, if you're budget conscious, wait till you get there before you spend the money.
Right. Yeah. And not locking yourself in too, because part of it is having like the unexpected experience,
Yeah,
right?
indulge
You
the
want
whimsy of
you
the
want some
moment.
certainty, but part of traveling is like really
Flexibility.
surfing the uncertainty.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm curious your philosophy on the open-ended ticket, whether cost is prohibitive or whether the cost involved in having an open-ended ticket gives you so much freedom.
I think I usually don't do open-ended tickets mainly because of cost reasons, and I also know I need to come back at some point.
Stupid reality.
But I think they're a great idea for, say college students or people taking a year off to do travel. If you know, like say you have a year or even a couple months to travel, then doing the open-end ticket is great, right? Because it allows you to just like experience things for as long as you want and then just hop a flight and then experience something else or try something else. And that way you're not like tied to anything. But I think for most travelers, it probably isn't the best choice. Like if you know you have 2 weeks, then it doesn't really make sense to do an open ticket, right? And you're going to get a better deal on the way home. But when you do have these spans of times, or you are taking a sabbatical of sorts, then I think it's great. I think it's a great way to go.
Cool.
And, she's talking about open-end tickets. I know that when I travel sometimes here in country, I've done one way and then purchased a second one-way ticket all on the same day. And it seems to be a little bit less expensive if you do it that way versus doing a round trip. I don't know if it works that way internationally, if you can do like a one-way flight and then a one-way flight coming back, but you're booking it on the same day. You're just using the one-way kind of thing like what I do when I'm inside the United States. So do you think that applies to outside of the country as well?
It certainly can. It's always worth, like if you're researching a certain destination and the airfare is coming up really high, then I definitely look at all different ways, every possible way to get there. And the one-way tickets can be, oddly enough, they can sometimes be cheaper. And especially if you're doing multi-city flights, sometimes just booking every leg individually versus a multi-trip ticket, it can be a lot cheaper for whatever reason. So it's always worth like just kind of looking at it and researching it to see, because you never know.
Wonderful. Yeah. Well, thanks, Jill. You indulged several very good burning questions we had. This concludes the bonus episode about how to pull the trigger for the series Carry On Only with Jill Pater.
Carry On Only.
Thanks for listening to Carry On Only, dedicated to inspiring your next global adventure. Listen to Jill take you around the world in style, live every week right here or 24/7 on demand at starworldwidenetworks.com. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share. For immediate access to Jill's destination guides, blog, and show notes, please visit jillpater.com and follow her on Instagram at Jill Pater.